Approached me with an idea, wondering if my public middle or high school would be interested in doing a project for a better world. I already knew a lot about a better world because we know Eric, and my dad and my brother went on a trip with a better world to Kenya in 2006, and they came back with these great stories and pictures, and my mom promised me that someday it would be my turn to go to Kenya. So I was always dreaming about that trip I had been promised. But I never dreamed that I would be organizing it. My school does a lot of trips. They go to Italy and France and Costa Rica, but this is a very different type of trip. My school had never done a service project of any type, really. And since that was something I was passionate about, I was very interested in the idea from the beginning. So Eric and I decided on a 2-year project. In the first year, I would get my whole high school involved in raising $21,000 to build 3 classrooms in Kenya. And then the second part of the trip would begin when those classrooms were done. A group of students who had helped fundraise could go and see the classrooms and the results of our efforts. So Eric went on to tell me about the perfect school he had in mind called Simotwet School. And Simotwet is this really rural school way up on a hill in Kenya and pretty bad road access. And for that reason, Simotwet School didn't get a lot of aid. So I thought it would be a good place for us to work. In my mind, this was the best idea the world had ever known, and everyone was going to be so excited, but once I got back to Yellowknife, I realized that that wasn't quite the case. As Eric told you, I had a hard time convincing my principal, and after hearing no 3 times, I gave up on her, and I went and pleaded my case to the vice principals. And they gave me more than the answer that I wanted. Well, they said, go ahead with the project, it's a good idea, but it's on you, and don't expect the school to take it on. So it was a little terrifying to know that the success or failure of the project rested on me, but I knew that I'd get a lot of helpers once I got the idea out there. And I remember my first newspaper interview for Project Kenya a while later, and then afterwards I was thinking, oh my goodness, now all of Yellowknife is going to know if I fail, and it was beginning to sink in that $21,000, it's a whole lot of money, and I was only 15 years old, so a good portion of each of my days was spent worrying about where is this money going to come from, and are people going to want to help me raise it, but I knew how richly the students of my school would be blessed by this project, so we kept going ahead. At the first meeting for Project Kenya, we had 22 students. I was very excited about that. And then all of a sudden, the project was underway. So in January, we actually began fundraising, the big job of fundraising. And to my relief, a lot of the parents of the students took on the role of organizing the fundraisers and planning what they would be, and we, the students, were the workforce. We were also encouraged by a donation from Jim and Gloria Stenhouse that got it all going, and we were excited to contribute to that fund. So a group of 22 students, there are 11 of them in this picture here, but a group of 22 students worked for 6 months. We did a bunch of car washes. We sold pizza every Friday at my school and had booths at special events, like when Kate and William came to Yellowknife, we sold hot dogs. And we did a lot of other projects like that. Also, each of us got a job. So the students were really dedicated and excited about going on this trip enough that they would go out and get a job, which was cool. We also extended the project to a number of middle schools and elementary schools. So we went over to those schools and did slideshows and gave them ideas on how they could get involved in the project. One school, Mildred Hall, its kindergarten to grade 8, raised $4,600 for the furnishing of the classrooms, and we were glad that they wanted to be involved in that. So when the school year ended in June, I could rest easy knowing that we had reached our goal of $21,000. But even when school started again in September, we kept on fundraising for student travel, and in total we raised over $40,000. Here are some pictures of our events. Then all of a sudden, it was March, and the we were ready to leave for Kenya. So this is our group of 11 students, 7 adults and 2 children. We left on February 28th and landed in Nakuru in pretty high spirits. We went right to East African Mission Orphanage, or for short we call it EMO. And I think a lot of the students were kind of unsure. Maybe the kids wouldn't want to play with us or they'd be shy, but as soon as we got there, they grabbed us by the hand and never let go for the whole time. It also took a lot of effort to convince them that this guy here, Brendan, as much as he looked like Jesus, he was not. We made a lot of friends here, and Greg, the little boy that Rick talked about, was one of my buddies. I think a highlight of this part of the trip was when we got to take some of the kids from EMO shopping. I had been asking some of the girls when they get to go to town because the orphanage is very rural, and they said, well, we get to go to town whenever the Canadians take us, which is cool, but there's 216 kids and they all have to take turns, so some hadn't been in 3 or 4 years. So it was a special event for both them and us. This is my friend Martha, who I took shopping. She brought a list of the things she wanted, and I brought $20, and we had a really good time, and it was very meaningful. The things she wanted were hair clips, and shoes, and backpacks, so we got all that. I also had a chance to stay overnight while the rest of the group went back to the hotel. The best part of that was I got to go and say goodnight to all the kids in the dorms, and they wanted me to each come in and sing in every one of their rooms. And some of the kids convinced me that they need, oh, miss, I need 3 goodnight hugs. So I had to do a lot of hugging. And also I met a lot of kids who had the same birthday as me and my mom, because the day before we'd kind of been giving our birthday away to the kids who didn't know when theirs was. And my mom said she'd used hers long enough, so she passed it on. EMO was a lot of fun for us. But the next part of the trip was the part that we looked forward to the most, because we got to go to Simotwet. Simotwet, of course, being the school that we fundraised the money for. And my favorite part of the whole trip by far was when we first pulled up to Simotwet and the whole community was out there blocking the road, from old ladies to little babies, and it was really cool. It was really loud, there was a lot of singing and dancing, and as we stepped out of the car there was cheering and they were throwing petals on us, and these ladies, these ladies came out and put Christmas garlands around our necks, and we just couldn't believe that it was all for us. I think all the students were really overwhelmed, and most of us were in tears because we had no idea what kind of a difference we had made and how much this meant to the community until we got there. Then they led us up the hill where they wanted us to plant some trees, and we got to go see the classrooms. They decorated them for us. They don't have the desks in yet, but this is what they look like on the inside. And here's our group outside the sign. This is a student from my school, Hannah, and a student from Simotwet, Naomi, cutting the ribbon. It's very exciting. And then the rest of the day we spent under this big canopy enjoying a celebration put on by the students. And there was a lot of dancing and singing, and we even got in on the dancing. And there was a lot of speeches too. When it was time for some of us Canadians to go up and give speeches, my mom told about how we had worked so hard to fundraise. And we were kind of hearing little gasping and noises from the audience, and we later realized that they had no idea we had to work for this money. They thought it just came out of our pockets or our parents gave it to us, and they were really surprised to hear that we had worked really hard for it. And so the next people who would get up to do a speech, like a teacher from the school would get up and say, "These students worked so hard to give you these new classrooms, now you must succeed." And that was cool. But when we left the ceremony that day, the words that were stuck in my head was something the superintendent of schools had said. He said, "Lots of people have tried to help Simotwet School before, but no one has helped us as much as the students of Sir John." We were so glad to know that our efforts were really appreciated in that community. The next day we were in the classrooms helping the kids make booklets because we had brought booklets from kids in Canada, as you can see here, and so now we were helping the Simotwet kids to write booklets back. They wrote about their families and drew pictures of themselves, and that was pretty fun. And at the end of that day, we gave out gift bags to every student at the school, and those were very popular. They had yo-yos and school supplies, suckers, balloons, all kinds of stuff in it. That was very exciting. We really grew to love those kids over the next 3 days that we spent with them. 3 days is not long enough, but we danced with them. Well, they taught us how to dance, and then we taught them how to do the chicken dance, which they really thought was fun. And we took a lot of pictures with them. They liked to do our hair. I got some great hairdos out of that. And this all made it really hard to leave when it came time to go. But they gave us as great a welcome, or as great a goodbye as they did a welcome. All the teachers were out standing by the road as our car went by. Here's a picture, oops. Here's a picture of them. They had on their NWT basketball shirts we gave them, and they were all blowing their whistles. It was a nice goodbye. So now there are 4 things that I learned from this trip that I want to leave with you guys. Number 1 is probably the obvious one, that here in Canada we're very privileged, and at least as far as material things and our stable government. And now I find myself looking at the little things with a new light when I remember how the kids at Simotwet loved markers when we gave them markers and they hadn't seen them before, and how exciting whistles were, and the megaphone was very appreciated. So now I kind of look at those little things differently. Number 2 is my image of Africa is not the one that is portrayed on television. I don't see Kenya as a place of starving kids sitting outside their huts all day. Although I know that happens, but I remember the kind, happy, and hospitable people there. So many smiles and a lot of sincerity, and the children were just great. It's not a matter of them not being able or not being capable to succeed, it's just that they need a chance, but these kids are very capable. The third thing that I learned is that everywhere we go with A Better World and Eric, we are honored guests. I think at every school we went to, we heard this little song that went like this. Mr. Eric, do you know that we love you? Shua! And yeah, it took us a while to figure out what Shua meant, but it just means sure. Anyway, we heard that song everywhere, whether it was in Maasai village or a hotel. The people really appreciate what A Better World does in their community. And even if we weren't part of a certain project, at that moment, to those people, we are the face of A Better World, and that makes us part of their community, and we did feel that a lot. And the last thing I learned is, well, before I left on the trip, I was having some worries about, what am I actually going to be doing here? Am I just going to be a tourist? I don't have much to offer because I'm not a teacher or a doctor, and I don't have a lot of money, so am I going to be able to do anything useful? But I'm happy to say that I really did feel useful. The people there were so encouraged by our presence, that we were there. They were amazed that we cared about them, all the way from Canada, and we cared about their goals and their education, and it meant a lot to them. And it taught me that everyone, no matter their qualifications or lack of qualifications, can make a difference. So my hope is that my high school will continue to do projects with A Better World in the future, because I want students like me to have the same opportunity that I had. It taught me a lot about myself and gave me ideas about my future and what I want to do. And when I first had that meeting with Eric, I never expected a trip like this, but I'm so glad it turned out this way. And now we have a song for you. We have a song for you called Let the Children Come, and we'll show you some of my favorite memories from the trip. Jesus looks so weary from the worries
kingdom is for children, so please let the children come. Let the children come. Don't dare drive them away. In them the kingdom